Get that out of your system now.
Where's the coffee?
Strategies for Real Estate, a 30-minute program updating you on today's real estate market and discussing current issues and opportunities in the desirable Silicon Valley. Plus, interviews with real estate experts giving you insight on what's to come. With your hosts, Tracy Knapp and Dan Lawson. And now, Strategies for Real Estate.
Hello and welcome to our program. I'm so happy you're with us today. We'll start our program off with our real estate climate segment. A very nice lady, Kelly Hunt from Realty World, would be my guest, and we're going to be talking about some of the complexities of today's real estate market and the transactions that you may find yourself in one day soon. We'll then go to our weekly spotlight. I have a very special guest, Steve Smith. He's from the Enlightened Mind, and we're going to be departing from our usual strategies and conversations about financial conversations and talking about something that's very important. I mean, you could have all the money you want. If you're not happy with someone special or you don't have good relationships in your life, all that effort just doesn't seem to have the same power and the same punch, does it? So Steve will be talking about how to have a more enlightened life. And I'm looking forward to having him on for that segment. So it's now time for our real estate climate segment. That's wrong. Hello and welcome to our Real Estate Climate segment. It's now my pleasure to introduce Kelly Hunt from Realty World. Kelly, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate the time you're giving us to do this spot, and the information you're going to share will be very valuable to everybody watching.
I'm hoping they think so.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. So, I led with the topic being dealing with this complex market we're in now, and there's new regulations, there's this, there's that, there's more laws, there's more contract requirements and so forth, and the need for professionals and not someone who's a part-time realtor is ever present.
Absolutely.
So with that, what are some of the things happening in today's complex market compared to maybe years past?
Well, I think there's a lot more issues, as you started to list right there. There is quite a laundry list that people didn't have to experience before. And even if somebody has bought or sold in the last 15 or 20 years, they may not have experienced some of these issues that we're now running into, such as short sales, for example, where you've got
Right.
sellers that are upside down. You've got REOs or bank-owned homes, for example. That's a whole nother animal in itself, and we haven't really had to contend with those type of listings, and it's been decades, really, I think since the mid-'80s. In addition, we have the changes that have been occurring with the financing. I think that's been a big obstacle for a lot of people, and it's not just for buyers because it has an impact on sellers as well.
As a lender and as a mortgage banker, I've had the listing agent say, would you mind calling my seller and explain exactly what's going on?
Right.
Because they haven't sold a house in a while. When they acquired maybe in 2003 or 2004, it was just steam a mirror and get a loan. So what is the problem?
Right, and that is the thing, is that people may have bought or sold a house 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and what they did then is not what you have to do now.
Correct.
And having finance background myself has been a huge help for me when it comes to sitting down with sellers and buyers, because I can give them the perspective of not only, okay, you want to sell your house, well, let me tell you what's going to be an obstacle for you as a seller that the buyers are running into, because ultimately it's going to impact the seller.
Yes,
So,
and I want to mention to all of you watching, you're going to hear us talk about obstacles and possible problems and things like this, and what we do as professionals is we're trained and we know how to look out for the potholes that are in the road, and our job is to steer around them. So it's not that it is a problem. We're gonna talk about how to make it a pleasant and easy experience, quite frankly. But knowing where the problems are is some of the things we're going to highlight today.
yes, that is actually what I think makes agents better, whether they're loan agents or real estate agents, is having some predictability on what to expect and how to...
Some anticipation of what's
Exactly, and that's unfortunately, I think, the biggest obstacle we all run into right now is it's very difficult to anticipate exactly what's going to occur because we keep running into new things.
coming. Sure. So what are some of the things that buyers are finding with houses now?
Well, it's no longer about, just trying to find a house that you like. It's also understanding how the sales are actually going to take place. So for example, I think it's very difficult for buyers nowadays to tell what's real. What's it really going to cost them to buy that home? Part of that, I think, is played into by the fact that we have short sales, for example. Those tend to be listed. I mean, everybody goes to the internet now, so you'll see listings way below what you know the price range to be in that particular neighborhood. So to a buyer, they're thinking this is a great deal. But in reality, it's just a home being listed for a particular price. It's designed to entice a buyer to come to the table that's willing to sit out the process of going through a short sale, which, as you know, can be very lengthy and difficult and sometimes doesn't even close. So,
And if they get closed, I just had a bank counter 40,000 over what their list price
and
was.
that's exactly what I mean. I mean, you can.
And it's like, really?
Yes, you see a list price.
Everybody agreed to the
you
offer,
think
and then
it's
the
a
bank
great
came back and
deal.
said, no, it's 40,000 below
That's
what we'll
right.
take.
That's right. Whatever a seller and a listing agent put on the list price for a property does not mean the short sale lender is going to agree to that. So
Correct.
again, it makes it very difficult for buyers to understand. The same thing's true with real REO. Bank-owned properties.
Right.
They're often listed below market. So what happens is they're really trying to entice multiple offer situations. And the unfortunate part for a buyer is that they see a property come under their radar that they really never could have afforded. It might be listed for $450, but the neighborhood's really going for $500, and the bank
Or
knows
higher, yeah.
or higher. And so here you got a buyer who's pushing the envelope, and they can afford $450 or $460, but the reality is it's going to go for $500 or $510. They never really even had an option to
Right.
even get into the game.
And again, I say this over and over on all the shows. It's so important to deal with a professional that really has their antenna up about what is real in that particular neighborhood.
Correct.
And whether or not that offer, if it's made, would get accepted
Right.
and transact.
Right. So you want to be able to show them the comparables. So if you look around and you look at the recent sales are going for $5 or $510, you can show a buyer $450 is not what you're going to get this house for. It's really out of your price range.
Right.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, and
It is.
but for all parties concerned, truly. But
Exactly.
it just is what it is. How about with sellers? What are sellers experiencing?
Well, they unfortunately get those same problems passed on because they're dealing with buyers. But I think the biggest obstacle with sellers right now is even if they, let's say they bought their house 5 or 6 years ago, their experience is different than what they're going to find now. And we have distressed sales going on all around the neighborhood. So it's very difficult for them to grasp the concept that those distressed sales are having the impact that they are on the value of their own home, which is a
Right.
regular sale. And the reality is that appraisers have to look at what the sales are doing in the neighborhood in the last 3 to 6 months.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a distressed sale or not. They can't set it aside completely. They can take into account that it was a distressed sale, short sale, or an REO. But the reality is that's what that home sold for, and it's going to impact the value of a regular traditional sale.
Correct. And when a lender who's working with a buyer, maybe has them pre-approved, goes in and if there's other sales, even just 1 or 2, the lender's concerned because when you understand the reason, it helps you understand the why.
Right.
And if I may just say this, it's like the lender's going to look and think, well, what is this? Not a trend in the market?
Right.
What if it's a trend of decline? We don't want to be involved in a transaction that looks like it's here, but it's really here.
Right.
So for them, they're looking for an appraiser to give an uninvolved, or not uninvolved, but
An
just
objective
an
opinion,
Thank you, an
yeah.
objective opinion about where value is.
Right.
So we all feel safe.
Right.
And that's really what the name of the game. We all want to be safe.
Yeah, and the lending, like I said, really impacts the seller. So if you help them to understand, and the lender's looking at if that buyer walked in and never made a mortgage payment, and that lender had to foreclose, they are now an REO in the neighborhood, and they are going to be selling it for what the prices are going for right now for another REO in that neighborhood.
Right.
So it has some impact. But the other thing you have to deal with too is if you have a home, let's say, that's in an association like a complex for a townhome or a condo, or a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, that's having a huge impact for sellers to sell their homes because it impacts the financing. It impacts the buyers because they're trying to get the loan, but it impacts the seller because they have buyers coming to the table that have financing or need financing to buy the house. They don't have all cash. And the lenders now have some pretty rigid guidelines, as you know, with regard to the associations and the strength of them. You've got reserve funds that might be running low. You've got other homeowners that aren't making their HOA dues. And so if more than 15% of the units within the complex are behind in their dues, that impacts the financing. So that is going to, again, impact the sellers when they're trying to sell. So if you have a lot of units in there where the dues aren't being paid, it's going to affect your ability to sell your home because the buyer can't get it financed.
And a lot of our conversation has been about homes that are borderline value and are in some of the more challenged neighborhoods or developments and so forth. And what I'm happy to see is so many. I mean, I don't want you to be watching this segment and think, oh my gosh, the sky still is falling, yike. Because there's just wonderful news out there, and things are really getting better for at least Santa Clara County and Silicon Valley, which is nice. So how about let's move to like buyers and sellers when they get into contract. What are some of the things that come up?
Well, again, financing obviously has to be a little bit of an issue, but then you get into negotiating about the property. So the condition of the property was not an element, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right.
If there was a property with some sort of alteration or addition that was done, appraiser just wouldn't give it value. Lender said, okay, fine. They signed off. Everybody closed escrow.
Right.
Now that same buyer is trying to sell his house 6 years later, and all of a sudden that addition that was in the garage or off the back of the house that was not a problem before is now an issue.
Right.
So, once you get into contract, you now have the elements about the actual property itself. So it's not just the buyer's qualifying, it's actually the property itself meeting the requirements, unless you have an all-cash buyer,
Correct.
which, can happen, but you can't rely on something like that.
You wouldn't want to have that narrow marketplace to have to appeal to,
Right.
When you're selling your home.
Well, it affects your value. If
It
you're
does.
having to sell something that you need to have a cash buyer, you're going to eliminate a part of your buyer base.
You will. Well, let's look to it. I want to make a comment. If you do have something that's unique like that, again, it's why you need to prepare, have a realtor come in and begin to advise you on what are the steps to take to fix or repair or change or improve that situation that might be adverse.
Right.
So I'd like to move on now with regard to this question I've been looking forward to asking you, and it's one where if a client is, or buyer or seller, they're thinking, the is, should I act now or should I wait?
Right.
So, what say you,
Right.
my friend Kelly?
Well, obviously you have a lot of different opinions out there depending on who you ask, but I still think it's a great time to buy. I mean, there's a lot of deals out there. We're at historical lows as far as values are concerned, as well as interest rates as well. So, I mean,
It's a double parlay.
it is.
I mean, it really is.
It really is. There's a lot of properties out there to take advantage of, and I don't mean in a bad way, but here's an opportunity for you to get into something that you thought you couldn't afford 4 or 5 years ago. So as far as buyers are concerned, I think they should go for it. As far as sellers are concerned, perfect opportunity to either buy up or buy out. A lot of people want to sell their homes that are worth, $400,000 or $500,000 now, and they want to buy a larger home. You might take 10% less on your home right now. That's worth $500, but you may save 10% on the home that you're going to spend.
That's worth $700. So
exactly.
The net value is $20,000.
And
so.
again, the rates are incredible, so it's still a good opportunity to take
And if you
advantage
wait
of
to
it.
sell your house and buy another one when things get
You're
better,
going to buy on the upward trend.
and rates will be higher, and it'll just cost you more. So you got
That's
to wonder.
absolutely correct.
So we've got just a bit of time. I said, and I teased everybody with the idea that we're going to talk about how to make the experience somewhat comfortable. So you got about 30 seconds. What are some of the ways we can make transactions move smoothly?
Well, I think you've touched base on it. It's really having a professional that you're working with that understands what's going on in the market and what's happening in the local market, because you can look at national news and state news, but that's not really going to tell you what's going on here. So it's important, I think, to have a professional who understands finance, who understands real estate, that can help walk you through that process. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
I'm glad you finally joined me on the show. It was your first time, and you did a wonderful job, and I look forward to having you on many times in the future. So
thank you very much.
Be looking for my friend Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoyed this segment. It's now time for our weekly spotlight. Hello and welcome to our weekly spotlight segment. It's now my pleasure to introduce Steve Smith from The Enlightened Mind. Steve, I've been looking forward to this conversation and having you on our program. This is going to be a lot of fun.
So am I. Thanks for having me, Dan.
You're welcome. I hope our viewers find this very valuable. As I mentioned in the leader, I said this was going to be a departure from some of the financial conversations I tend to have, and the strategies and all these things. And if I were to use the word strategy, it's more of a what you share and what you teach, and what we're going to talk about today are really strategies to have a better relationship with people you work with, and more importantly, with someone that you love and that loves you.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I've been through your class, and I did enjoy it. So tell us about some of the work you do and the type of people you assist.
I am a marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in relationships. So I work a lot with couples and individuals who are either struggling in their relationships or want to take their relationship to the next level and have an extraordinary relationship.
Which I like that distinction, because it's not, you don't need to see Steve when you're having trouble. It's like, if you want to get back to some, I don't know, just some special moments and some of that special feeling.
Exactly.
I mean, why wait till there's turbulence?
Right, exactly. People don't have to be struggling. If they want additional tools, just additional tools to really, take their relationship to a different level. I offer that as well. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what prompted you to get into this practice?
Well, I never thought that I would be helping people in relationships. Years ago, I was not very good and not very successful in my own relationships. So I set out on a journey to discover what it was all about. What really makes a good relationship? What is it all about? And what I realized along the way is that we are all here on this earth to learn how to love each other. That's part of the reason that we are here, I believe. And I thought, what better way?
Well, that's a pretty good mission right there.
Yeah. And I thought, what better way to help people with loving each other than to become a marriage and family therapist? Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and I love the work, and I'm committed to helping people have extraordinary relationships. And I believe that we're all capable of having wonderful relationships.
So what are some of the challenges you see between relationships, couples, and so forth? Of the many that you might see.
Yeah, I do see many.
What are some of the challenges?
I think the most fundamental issue is how do I love my partner, which is unconditionally accept them and allow them to be themselves, when they may be behaving in a way or doing things that are irritating to me or bothersome to me, or I may think they're inappropriate. So how do I continue to love them, to see the best in them, to believe in them when those things are also occurring? And that's sort of the heart of what I work with people on. And that could be, it doesn't really matter what the issues are. It could be financial, it could be relatives, it could be anything. But that's the heart of the matter right there.
I couldn't agree more, because the interaction that happens, you start off being in love and everything and anything that's said is just perfect and love is grand, and then that period begins to go away, and I've often wondered, well, why does it have to end? It doesn't have to, but it's as if the things that you mentioned, the things that might irritate your partner, or the things said that you can't take things back, and little by little there's this each brick adds to the wall of separation, and your tools hopefully you provide ways for people to kick some of those walls down so you can reach across and just find that pure essence of love again.
That's right. That's exactly it. And it's true. The feeling of love, it may come and go, but it doesn't have to go away completely. And one of the things that I found, two very important points that I finally came to realize, and that's this. If I am judging my partner or thinking critical thoughts or resenting in some way, then those thoughts are toxic to me. So they're actually affecting my own well-being when I'm thinking that way about my partner. And I think the reason that is so is that, as I mentioned, at our core, we are, at our core essence is wanting to love. It's wanting to be in a place of loving people. And so when we deviate from that, we begin to feel bad when we're judging or criticizing or resenting, even if it's just in our minds. And so that's an important point to understand. And then the second one is that our thoughts and feelings and emotions and beliefs actually have creative power. They're actually influencing our lives in a big way. So if I'm thinking thoughts such as, my wife, she doesn't listen to me and she doesn't care about what I have to say, and if I keep thinking those kinds of thoughts and get caught in those kinds of patterns, I will begin to see that more and more in my relationship, and actually begin to sort of influence it in my relationship. Because
you actually create something you really don't even want.
Exactly.
That you're unhappy with.
Exactly.
It's like if you say, I want to buy a red sports car. Pretty soon all you see are red sports cars driving around.
That's
Same
right.
kind of thing, yeah?
Same kind of thing, same kind of thing. And so the opposite is true too. If I begin to truly see what I appreciate in my partner, and I can truly start to believe in the best in them and see the best in them, then I will begin to see that more and more. And
Just as you say that, it makes me want to smile. No,
Yes,
truly.
it's true. It's
to
true.
just shift your thought from scrutinizing someone and being judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
or looking at, I appreciate and I love what they do here and I love what they do there. Yeah, I mean, it's just,
it's very
in practice, it's challenging.
Yes,
but
in,
it does
in
sound pretty
practice,
easy.
it's challenging because of the patterns, the habits that we've gotten into with our thinking. And so that's the key: is to break those habits of thinking, the patterns, and that's what I work with people on, is how to do that. And I have a lot of tools that I teach, and a lot of ways to help people shift that way of thinking.
Well, give me an example. I mean, this is the perfect time to ask. What would be an example? Set a presence. Set a precedent about what it is, and then just give us a tool on what that, how someone might deal with it. What is very common you see between couples?
Well, let's see. One of the
I'm taking you off guard because this one, you had no idea I was going to ask you this, but it just, I'm asking for my audience because
Right.
they're watching going, come on, Dan, ask the question.
Well, it really, so partly it depends on where they are emotionally, because different tools work depending on how you're feeling. So if I'm in a very reactive state, I'm very mad, I'm very angry, then I can't just go to what I appreciate in my partner, because it's too far of a difference, right?
Right.
So I have to use different tools, and they vary. One of them may just be complete distraction. I'm just going to go distract myself and do something else for a while until I can move myself back into a better place, and then I can start to think about more of the things that I would like in my relationship, or more of the things that I appreciate in my partner. So that's one thing that I do. Another is, this is a very important one that I teach couples, is that doing a daily appreciation list. It's kind of like a gratitude journal. And you just list a few things every day that you appreciate about your partner, or things that they've done for you.
Would you list little things like, boy, I'm glad my wife made me lunch, or I'm glad my wife smiled at me this morning
Absolutely.
when she came into the bedroom and I'd already made it for her, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Even the little things.
Even the little things, very important, because it's keeping the way you're seeing your partner in a positive light, and it's very important. And again, the reason this is important is because the way I'm thinking, my own beliefs, my own thoughts are creative. They are influencing and creating my experience.
So it actually creates somewhat of a filter. So you tend not to see the things that are so beneficial and warm about your partner if you're living or drawing the curtain closed on how much you might love the person, but how much you're irritated about the things that they're doing to set you off. And then pretty soon you get all these affirmations about what's setting you off.
That's right. Yeah, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So
pretty much.
the tool is to begin to train yourself to walk down a different path and look down change the channel, so to speak.
Yes.
And receive different things and see different things in your partner.
That's right. And on the surface, it sounds very difficult to do, and it is at first, especially if you've gotten into habits contrary to that. But you can do it. It takes little steps at a time.
Well, are these some of the things you teach in your class when you? Well, I shouldn't say. But why don't you tell us about some of the things you teach in your class? Because I went through it and I found it to be very enlightening and beneficial, not only for my relationship with my wife, but there were a number of things that I saw going on with people in my office, and I was able to help them. I mean, it was beautiful.
Yes. We have it's a class. It's called the Enlightened Relationship, and it's all about a new relationship paradigm that we're teaching. And I am so excited about this class because we're seeing such great benefits and people experiencing tremendous changes in their relationships, and that's what I'm really excited about. But the old paradigm of relating is not really working anymore. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of problems in relationships today.
Well, give us some adjectives of the old paradigm. How would you describe the old paradigm so people can go, yeah, that's my life?
Well, have you ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire? So that one scene in
Show me the money?
No, not that one. That was a good one too. The other scene is where he comes back to his beloved and says, "You complete me," right? Yeah. And it's a very touching scene and a wonderful scene, but it's a flawed premise. If I think that someone can complete me, then I'm going to be really dependent upon them for my happiness and so forth. And that's sort of the Hollywood version of romance. And that's one big problem. Another is, which is an extension of that, is our relationships have become need-based, which is I have needs and my partner must fulfill those needs. And so again, if they're not doing something right, if they're not fulfilling my needs, that I'm going to get angry, I'm going to get upset, and disappointed, right? It doesn't work that way. The third one is, I call it mad compromise disease. And this is where